Today we have 5 new English terms: globalization, cultural diversity, social justice, consumerism, and global warming. As you listen to the story, try to guess the meaning of each term. And after the story, we'll go deeper into each term. Are you ready? Well then, my friend, let's jump right in. The title of our story is The Connected World. The smartphone screen illuminated Maria's face as she scrolled through her news feed. Headlines about climate protests, economic inequality, and cultural festivals competed for her attention. At 28, she had grown up in a world transformed by globalization, but lately, she had been questioning whether this interconnectedness was truly bringing people together. Maria worked for an international nonprofit focused on cultural diversity initiatives. Her colleague Raj, who had moved from Mumbai to Boston 5 years ago, often shared stories about the challenges of maintaining his cultural identity in a new country. "Sometimes I feel like we're losing what makes us unique," Raj said during their lunch break. "My nieces and nephews back home are watching the same shows, wearing the same brands, and eating the same fast food as kids here." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "That's the paradox of consumerism, isn't it? We have access to products from around the world, but somehow end up with less diversity, not more." Their organization was preparing for an upcoming conference on sustainable development. The theme this year focused on how communities could preserve their cultural heritage while addressing global challenges like global warming. One evening, Maria found herself in a heated debate with her brother Carlos, who worked for a multinational corporation. "You can't halt progress," Carlos argued. "These international businesses create jobs and improve living standards." "At what cost?" Maria countered. "When corporations exploit workers in developing countries and contribute to environmental degradation, that's not progress. That's why social justice needs to be part of the conversation." The next day, Maria's team received unexpected news. Their conference funding had been cut by a major sponsor who felt comfortable or uncomfortable with the political nature of some planned discussions. "This is exactly what we're fighting against," said Raj, frustrated. "Corporate interests are silencing important conversations about sustainability and equity." Instead of giving up, Maria proposed an alternative approach. "What if we invite local businesses that practice fair trade and environmental responsibility? We can showcase how ethical business practices can align with cultural preservation." The conference turned out to be their most successful yet. By highlighting local artisans, sustainable farmers, and community activists, they demonstrated how globalization could work when guided by principles of social justice and respect for cultural diversity. The event culminated with a powerful panel discussion featuring indigenous leaders who shared traditional knowledge about living in harmony with nature, wisdom increasingly valued in the fight against global warming. As Maria watched participants exchanging ideas and forming new partnerships, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps the interconnected world could be reclaimed from the forces of excessive consumerism and redirected toward building a more just and sustainable future. "The challenges we face are global," she told the audience during her closing remarks. "But so are our strengths when we come together while honoring our differences." Walking home that evening, Maria noticed details she often overlooked. A community garden where neighbors from different backgrounds shared growing techniques, a repair cafe where people fixed items instead of discarding them, and a mural celebrating the neighborhood's diverse heritage. The story of our connected world, she realized, was still being written. And every day in communities everywhere, people were choosing which version of globalization they wanted to create. Such an amazing story. But on top of the amazingness of this story is the fact that you heard each of the 5 terms: globalization, cultural diversity, social justice, consumerism, and global warming. Let's start by going deeper into the first term, globalization. This term was heard at the very beginning of our story in the first paragraph, globalization. And the sentence was, at 28, she had grown up in a world transformed by globalization, but lately she had been questioning whether this interconnectedness was truly bringing people together. So the question is, what does this term globalization actually mean? Let's dive deeper. The term globalization actually means the process of increasing interdependence and integration among people, businesses, and governments worldwide. The process of increasing interdependence. Now let's check out these example sentences. Here's the first example sentence. Globalization has led to increased cultural exchange. Next, globalization has had a significant impact on the global economy. And finally, globalization can lead to both positive and negative consequences. So now we understand this term globalization. Let's go back to the story and read that entire paragraph where the term was used. Here we go. The smartphone screen illuminated Maria's face as she scrolled through her news feed. Headlines about climate protests, economic inequality, and cultural festivals competed for her attention. At 28, she had grown up in a world transformed by globalization, but lately she had been questioning whether this interconnectedness was truly bringing people together. Now you understand the meaning of globalization and you understand how it was used in our story for today. Our next term is cultural diversity. Again, cultural diversity. This term was also used at the beginning of our story. In the second paragraph, cultural diversity. The sentence was, Maria worked for an international nonprofit focused on cultural diversity initiatives. So now let's dive deeper into this term to understand what it actually means. Cultural diversity. This refers to the presence of a variety of cultural or ethnic groups within a society. I mentioned earlier that I live in Maryland. In one of our previous lessons, I live in Maryland and there are many different cultures. I'm surrounded by many different cultures. American, Chinese American, Indian American, African, so many different cultures. It's very diverse. And cultural diversity, again, the meaning is the presence of a variety of cultural or ethnic groups. So let's check out the first example sentence. Cultural diversity enriches our communities. Next, cultural diversity can lead to misunderstandings and conflict. And finally, cultural diversity is essential for innovation and creativity. So we understand this term, cultural diversity. Now let's go back to where it was used in the story and read the paragraph. Here we go. Maria worked for an international nonprofit focused on cultural diversity initiatives. Her colleague Raj, who had moved from Mumbai to Boston 5 years ago, often shared stories about the challenges of maintaining his cultural identity in a new country. So we understand the second term, cultural identity. Now let's move to our third term, social justice. And we had this term in a previous lesson, so we're revisiting this term to make sure you understand it. Social justice. In our story, we heard this in the middle, social justice. And the paragraph was towards the middle of our story, but let's read the sentence that used social justice. Here we go. That's why social justice needs to be part of the conversation. So what exactly does social justice mean? Again, a term we had before and we're revisiting it. Social justice. This refers to justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. The distribution, equal distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges, not based on a person's color, but everyone. Social justice. Here are 3 example sentences. Social justice advocates for fairness and equality. Next, social justice movements aim to address systemic inequalities. And finally, social justice issues include poverty, discrimination, and human rights. So we understand this term social justice. Now let's go back and read the paragraph from our story where this term was used. Here we go. Maria arguing with her brother Carlos. She says, "At what cost?" Maria countered. "When corporations exploit workers in developing countries and contribute to environmental degradation, that's not progress. That's why social justice needs to be part of the conversation." Now you get it, right? This term, social justice. Let's move now to our 4th term. Our 4th term is consumerism. Consumerism. Now, in the story, this term consumerism was used towards the beginning of our story in this paragraph, and I want us to read the first sentence, the sentence that has this term, consumerism. Here we go. "That's the paradox of consumerism, isn't it? That's the paradox of consumerism, isn't it?" So what does this term consumerism actually mean? The term consumerism refers to the preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods. In other words, the desire to have more material possessions, and we're focused on it. I need a new bag, I need a new car, I need a new insert what material possession you want. Consumerism. Again, the preoccupation of society with the acquisition, the acquiring of consumer goods. Here's the first example sentence. Consumerism is often driven by advertising and marketing. Next, consumerism can lead to excessive consumption and waste. And finally, consumerism has a significant impact on the environment. So we understand this term consumerism. Now let's go back to where it was used in the story and read the paragraph. Here we go. Maria nodded thoughtfully. "That's the paradox of consumerism, isn't it? We have access to products from around the world, but somehow end up with less diversity, not more." So we see how the term consumerism was used in the story, and you understand the meaning. Now let's go to our final term, global warming. Global warming. Now this term was also used, let's say, at the beginning of our story, global warming. Let's read the sentence that had this term in it. Here we go. The theme this year focused on how communities could preserve their cultural heritage while addressing global challenges like global warming. So, what does this term global warming actually mean? The term global warming refers to a gradual increase in average global temperature. A gradual increase. It's hotter than it was last year. It's hotter than it was 50 years ago. Again, a gradual increase in average global temperature. Here's the first example sentence. Global warming is caused by greenhouse gas emissions. Next, global warming is a serious threat to the environment. And finally, global warming can lead to more extreme weather events and rising levels. So we understand this term global warming. Now let's go back to the story and read the full paragraph that included this term. Here we go. Their organization was preparing for an upcoming conference on sustainable development. The theme this year focused on how communities could preserve their cultural heritage while addressing global challenges like global warming. Now you see what this term means, right? We've had these 5 terms. Again, globalization, cultural diversity, social justice, consumerism, and global warming. Terms that will help you when you get into certain conversations. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Don't forget, if you want to receive emails totally for free every day from me with 5 new vocabulary words, all you have to do is go to www.dailyenglishvocabulary.com. I'll talk to you in the next lesson.